the lens that I view other coaches from might not be fair, simply because, a lot of these coaches are, hey, they're like me, they're dads, and they're like, hey, I'll volunteer, I'll go coach. And I think it's awesome. The difference is my lens being that I do this as a profession. It might not be fair how I judge them, but I started seeing a lot of things. I was like, man, there's some things little things that if they were to make these adjustments and how they interacted with kids, how they ran practices, it would be a lot better. And then all the parents of all the kids I train, they would always voice their frustrations, and they would say, man, that you have politics in sports, right? That's always going to be a thing. um, there would be training where they would go, man, like the practices, and they just kept a lot of complaining, a lot of, man, I wish it was like this, I wish it was like that. And I understand all these parents, coaches, we're all doing our best, but I felt like the information was so random, right? You have this random dad coaching, maybe I don't know, flag football, right? And then they go see this random trainer and do some random strength training, and then they go see this other guy for speed, and then they got mom and dad, and what we fail to realize is that we end up having too many cooks in the kitchen, and guess who's the victim? Little Johnny.
Yeah.
Little Johnny, and they get
Johnny and Timmy.
overwhelmed. So I know David's been in, he grew up as an athlete doing travel ball and all that. So if you want to kind of share some insight on your journey.
It's definitely a lot, especially for parents, because I mean, coaches alone, you kind of get what you get. Sometimes you just have coaches in the area who just aren't the best when it comes to understanding how to motivate the kids and how to actually speak to the kids in a way that, because the sports are supposed to be fun. Like competitive drive is supposed to be in there too. You should have a want to win, but it shouldn't be the only thing you should be seeking to get from the sport. There's learning lessons within it that, unfortunately, due to coaches and even pressures from family, that it just kind of takes away from it. And I remember that was like my biggest gripe, not just the injuries, but the mental side of it, of the pressure you feel from coaches, from family members, parents, whether it's dad being a little too much. Um, and so if you want to have your kid have a great experience within it, unfortunately, the coach's side, you can't always get to pick, but as a parent, it's a huge responsibility to understand, and see it in a certain lens of understanding that this isn't just the sport, that this is also life. There's life lessons within it too to learn, and yeah, just have a really good supportive background can help a kid go a long way.
100%. And I remember during COVID, I'll never forget this. During COVID, we got shut down, right? So a lot of at the facility I was working at the time, a lot of the college athletes came back because school got closed and everything, right? And I remember talking to a specific athlete. Um, he was training, and I think at the time, I think he was like 19 years old, maybe 20 years old. I think it was in his first or second year of college. I can't remember. And he goes, when athletes show up, we always spend, the first 10 minutes kind of shooting the shit and kind of catching up and talking about sports. And I love to, I'm obsessed with sports. You guys are going to quickly learn how obsessed I am with sports. And I love all sports. I think it's awesome. But he goes, we're talking. I'm like, hey, how's your weekend? This and that. I didn't see you last week. Where were you? And then he goes, Coach, I got to tell you, he goes, I went camping, and I forget where, but he was telling me about his experience camping. And I remember listening to him and him describing going camping, going to the river like a 12-year-old. Now, granted, I'm guessing he was about 20 years old at the time. And he was so excited, and he's talking about, how much fun he had. And he was like really like over the top. Like, I was like, dude, I was like, man, like what? Like, I gotta figure out where this river's at,
And
because
see the magic water out there.
yeah, I was like, man, I don't know what's in the water. And then I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever like been camping before? Have you ever, like, what? like, you seem super excited. I think it's cool, but what's going on? Is this like your first time ever? And he goes, kind of. He goes, last time I went was when I was 11 years old. This is a baseball player. He played travel ball. He also played on the high school team. You know, he was all over the country traveling, playing baseball. And he said, I never got the opportunity to actually just enjoy myself, to be a kid. I feel like it was robbed from me. I said, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I'd go to a city, I'd go to Arizona, I'd go somewhere, you know, different state. And, you know, we'd have a little dead time, a few hours, but it was like next game, next game. We're having 2, 3 games, you know, we're in a hotel, get on the airplane, get back home, play some more, train some more, practice on Monday. And he goes, it just was never a thing. I've traveled a lot, but I've never had the opportunity to just explore, be a kid, socialize. And I was like, oh, okay. So it made sense to me. This same athlete, I want to say about 2 weeks later, this is all going on during COVID. He goes, you know what? He goes, hey, Coach Henry. He goes, I talked to my college coach and I told him I'm done. I was like, whoa, like, this kid had been working his whole life, you know, doing all these different things. He was very, very committed, hard worker. Like, he checked all the boxes, right? Had skill, had a good arm, could hit the ball far. And he finally got his scholarship. And then he goes, I'm over it. He goes, I don't want to. He goes, I'd rather just hang out with my friends. And I was like, at first, I was like, that sounds kind of stupid, right? And then when I really started to think about it, I was like, oh, dang. Now it gets crazy. I would say in a span of about maybe 2 or 3 months, the exact same scenario, same story of kids being in college in their first, second, or third year saying, I'm done. And the parents, I know these kids' parents, and they're like, we just invested your whole, like,
To
everything
get you
into
there at that
to
school
get you to that
wanted and
spot.
stuff. Yeah.
We hit that goal, you know, we hit that peak, and now these athletes are dropping like flies, and
Get more time on their hands now. They're doing things outside the sport
they were doing things outside the sport.
for the first time in their life, probably. Because
Probably, and they all had the same similar story.
I remember in high school there was times where I had practice, and then after practice I had training, and then I have you for training. I have like 2 different training sessions: you with the body, and then the other guy doing external stuff for basketball or actual workouts and stuff. And then then the sports, and you just get so invested in it, and but you love it in the moment. And then as you get older, and from my experience looking back now, I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't do as much. Because you also see how it can damage the body too in certain ways. Especially if you don't take the time to rest and get back into it. But mentally, to get it out, like you said, how he went to camping, it was to his body like, oh, there's more, like life. There's life
Correct.
in the sport. And a lot of people don't. I think you need a healthy balance of that
A
growing
hundred
up.
percent. And to kind of put it into perspective, so when that happened during COVID, it was really eye opening. You know, like, hearing that, I'll never forget that story. And then it happened to many athletes after that. This same athlete that ended up quitting, right? I think he quit for he. I don't remember the exact details, but he ended up coming back and playing baseball again after taking about a year off, just getting his body right to feel good. He was always injured. He goes, I just need time to let my body heal. And he said, I need to let my mind heal. I said, okay, cool. He's playing pro baseball now. He took a year off, which from college, came back. He's playing pro baseball. Crazy. I got another story. So I have this other athlete. His name's Antonio. Um, One of the best humans I've ever met. Like, this kid was such a competitive athlete. He did anything I asked him to do. He was very respectful, and but a better human than he was an athlete. Right? Phenomenal human, and that's kind of like always my goal. In case you're wondering, Functional Speed Academy, that's my company, and build a human first, then make them faster. Is kind of like my thing, trademark. In case you try to steal it. Um, No, so Antonio, he shows up one day. This is probably, I think it's 2021, maybe 2022. 2022. It was about 2 years ago, maybe three. I can't remember. He's burnt out. He shows up and says, "Hey, coach, I just going to talk to you." And, you know, a lot of these kids I work with are with me for some years, and I develop some really strong bonds with them. And, they'll tell me things that they don't tell mom and dad, and that's awesome. That just shows the level of trust, right? But he was telling me like he was pretty much checked out. He's over it. He was like his body hurts. He's like, I have. He was in travel soccer, so he played soccer for his high school team, and he played travel soccer. Same exact story. But he wasn't all the way checked out. He was just letting me know that like I'm just not in a good mental space. I said, Antonio, I got a perfect solution for you.
I feel like that's a huge reason why a lot of athletes crash out. It like you said, damage to the body, but also the mental pressure from everything.
Correct.
And and not to bring the mood down, but it is a source that it is something that goes into depression. I,
Oh,
I,
for sure.
I remember like in high school, I had so much pressure on me. And I think I also created obviously a lot of pressure on myself to have to succeed. I was like, I need to succeed. I needed to succeed. To an unhealthy point, where basketball was my life. That was all I knew was basketball. I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Um, and yeah, I remember when the injuries started coming, the pressure of just the understanding my senior year is coming around the corner. I need to get better. And now I got a labrum tear. And then I get back in 2 weeks later after I'm healed, healthy, doing better than I've ever done before, breaking my wrist. And I'm back and now I got a concussion. And life just, and so I remember there's a huge depression. I was like, I should not be in high school. Looking back now, I'm like, why was I in high school like depressed and even to a point of like suicidal? Like that's not healthy at all. And I realized that I never did anything outside of my sport. I never actually tried to see what else was out there, and that was the biggest reason for the depression was I didn't know what else I could do.
Yeah.
Nothing else. I knew nothing else other than basketball, and so it was a huge learning curve for me to try and just figure your life out.
It's interesting that you talked about like the depression and being suicidal and all these different things. I remember not this Olympics, but even the prior Olympics, Simone Biles was talking about her mental health. You're talking about like the most polished gymnast, I think, probably the GOAT when it comes to gymnastics. And she was having mental health issues. And if you understand anything about the gymnastic space, that world is like intense, right? Almost cultish. Like those people don't mess around. Like their work ethic is like second to none. But she was describing her mental health. And I remember this is actually recent. You can look it up. Do you remember Andrew Luck?
Yeah,
Okay.
Colt, he left because yeah,
So
yeah,
there was a podcast he made about a year ago. So he used to be he was a franchise quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And he had, you know, injury bug. He's one of those guys, right? But he was like, at the time, he was probably like top three, for sure, top five. And he bounced back from injury after injury after injury. Game one of the season, he had he got injured again. It wasn't a big injury, but it was like you're going to sit down for like 3 or 4 weeks. And it was like, man, he just came back from a really big injury, and now he just got another one. And then he was out for 3 or 4 weeks, and there he's like, I'm done. And then so from the time he retired to the time he did the podcast, I think there was probably like a good 4 year gap, maybe 3 or 4 years. There's some years in between. And then he explained the real reason wasn't the rehab. He goes, it was the mental, the toll it had taken on his body and more so his mind with his family. He said football has been everything from the time he was in Pop Warner, you know, in college. He goes, it was just, it wasn't fun anymore, right? It wasn't fun, and it was the mental health. So it's a big thing because if you actually do some research, and I've done a lot of research on mental health, I'm a big advocate of mental health. But if you do research, you'll see that depression and anxiety is the highest it's ever been, just like in the past 10 years. So like from 2014 to now, depression and injuries are the highest it's ever been. Specifically with injuries, I've actually talked about this many times over the years. I share this with parents, but with the advancements in science and training, you would think that injuries would go down, right?
yeah. That's
Wait, let me cut you off for a second. 400% increase in the
that's a lot,
past 10 years. That's not a small problem. A problem is like, man, injuries have gone up by like 30%,
or even like 5%.
5%, 400%
Percent.
increase. So
Yeah.
is it by accident that mental health and physical they go hand in hand, right?
Oh yeah, because if you're out sitting on the bench, like that's not fun. You don't want to be sitting on the bench knowing that you could be playing the game. And on top of that, just with everything going on in life with phones and stuff nowadays, what you're seeing, like that doesn't help out either. So yeah, there's so
There's
many different things applying into it.
correct. Just to kind of we're probably going to do this very often, go on
Yeah.
some rabbit trails, but go back to the story of Antonio. So keep in mind, 2 years. This is about 2 years ago, maybe three. Now I know I'm like, ooh, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
Like I don't want him to quit. He's really good, right? So I said, Antonio, I got a homework assignment for you. He goes, okay, coach, what do you want me to do? I said, this weekend, I want you to call up some of your friends and you're going to go to the beach. He goes, okay. He goes, like, you want me to like do some sprints in sand or like, he's thinking I'm talking training, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, none of that. Just go have a good time. Don't get arrested. Don't do anything stupid, right? I said, go have a good time. You're not allowed to look at your phone. Don't even take a soccer ball. I don't want to hear the word soccer come out of your mouth.
You tell, train yourself to rewind and relax.
Yeah, I say just have a good time with your
Yeah.
friends. And he had a tournament, a showcase that weekend, that same weekend. And he goes, well, coach, I have a showcase. I say, Antonio, you've been working your whole life, right, to be the best soccer player possible, right? Very skilled. And so I said, so what you're telling me is that this one showcase that you have this weekend, if you miss that, all of it was for nothing. That showcase will determine the trajectory of your athletic career. That one showcase. He goes, well, no. Like I said, okay. And it clicked. And I was good friends. His mom and his dad were awesome. You know, I communicated with them and I let them know, like, listen, like we got to get the mind right. If the mind's not right, the body's not right. And long story short, I've never told you the story. He goes to the beach, goes with his friends, does his own thing, comes back Monday, tells me how excited. He sounded like the other kid, right?
Yeah.
Telling me how excited, how much fun he had and messing around, you know, chasing girls, whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I said, so take a guess, David, what kind of training week he had after that?
Phenomenal one.
Phenomenal. He said, I've never seen him train so hard. So about a month later after that, he literally had an insane month. But his mental, I said, Antonio, you don't need to quit the sport. You just need to recharge the battery. I said, there's a difference. And the cool thing about athletes is we don't need a lot. We just need a little, but don't take away the little. About a month later, he texted me. He showed me a screenshot and he got an offer in Madrid to go play professional soccer. And they were going to pay for his school. I said, he goes, what should I do? I was like, go take it. I was like, also go have fun out there.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny how like just that little thing he could have quit and just be like, you know what? I'm over it. I've been doing it my whole life. I just want to go to the beach, hang out with my friends. And he didn't do that. We just recharged his battery, his mental battery, came back, got after it, gets an offer.